everybody, and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're walking in Memphis. The topic of this episode, CWA Memphis Wrestling from June 23rd, 1984. And if you want to watch the show that I'm about to review before watching this, pause right here. In the description, there's going to be a link to the video. There's also going to be another link there, a link to my good friend Bucky749's YouTube channel. Check him out. He's got some really cool stuff on there. I've watched a few of his videos. I haven't watched it all just yet. I just found out he actually made some videos the other day, but it's really cool so far what I've seen. So check out Bucky's video. He does review some Memphis wrestling stuff if you enjoy that. So check him out. With all that being said, we grade everything here on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right into it. We start the show with promos from Jimmy Hart and Austin Idol doing an interview, followed by a Porkchop Cash interview, who Porkchop says he's going to leave for his family. Right away, I was extremely happy about this. Porkchop Cash is someone, and I don't know if it was my view of him when I was a kid, or it was just the way he was portrayed. But I always felt like Porkchop was a bigger deal than what has been historically stated. I mean, to me, I thought Porkchop was one of my favorite wrestlers in the Memphis territory. So, seeing him here, it really put a smile on my face. I loved this. I loved his interview style. It's the style that gravitated to me when I was a child, similar to how Dusty Rhodes gravitated towards me, to Roddy Piper gravitated towards me. It just felt real. Porkchop Cash felt like a real person. Great interviews to start off, which leads us into a match with Jamison versus Porkchop Cash, and I'm gonna rate the whole segments as a whole, interviews and matches, as one, because of the way that the show is formatted. If you haven't seen these before, we got Jamison versus Porkchop Cash, the aforementioned wrestler. This is a really good match. Porkchop here kind of was showing that he's not going to be a rule breaker anymore, more of a mat-based wrestling style here. Obviously, Porkchop picks up the win. I'm giving this one a 3. I thought it was a good match. I've seen a lot better from Porkchop, and I kind of feel him trying to prove he's a good guy. Again, this is out of context, so I don't know where the story went for the next few weeks or months. Or, I don't remember exactly how the story went, to be honest with you. So out of context, the match wasn't as good. Probably if you look at it as an overall story arc, it'll be better. But the way I review these shows totally at random. So, with that being said, out of context, I give it a 3. And actually, the interviews, Jimmy Hart, Austin Idol, and Porkchop Cash interviews, they were really solid. Those were top notch. I'd give them a 5. Just the match itself, to me, lacked a little bit. Next up, we're going to lump a whole bunch of things into one. We get a Fabulous Ones video showing highlights, and it's the original Fabulous Ones that's going to be important here in a second, of Steve Keirn and Stan Lane, and this is not one of the quote-unquote Chippendales videos that they had, or very, I don't know how to say this in a politically correct way, but there were some very weird, I would guess you could put it as homoerotic videos, or they come off as such now. They didn't then. It didn't feel that way then. But looking at it now, they come off that way. This was not that. This was just a highlight video. But those videos are extremely famous. That's why I mentioned them. They're coming back to the territory, which funnily leads us to an interview with the Fargo's Fabulous Ones, or the new Fabulous Ones, which was Tommy Rich and Eddie Gilbert, both very young here. It's funny because there was a dispute. The Fabulous Ones left Memphis. They tried to make a new Fabulous Ones, and it didn't get over well. I'm not saying that either Tommy Rich or Eddie Gilbert are bad wrestlers. They're both great. It just failed in this iteration. And it's much like Al Snow with the New Rockers. Al Snow's a great wrestler, but he didn't work as a new rocker. He worked better, much better, as just being Al Snow. We get an interview with the Fargo's Fabulous Ones, and then another Austin Idol Jimmy Hart interview promoting the local show. Again, really good stuff, which leads us into another video. And this one's strange, the phrasing. And if this is politically incorrect, I am so sorry. I'm just going to say it how it was said. The Oriental Connection Masahito promo video leading to his match. And I don't know how you could be considered the Oriental Connection when it's just one guy. Maybe it considers him and his manager as two guys, but I don't know. I honestly didn't remember Masahito. I remember the name, but I don't remember ever seeing or watching any of his matches. And looking at this match, looking at him, he didn't look familiar other than he had the same gear that Masahito wore and Mr. Fuji wore. Why do I keep saying won? And kind of like the Samoans wore back in that day. Other than that, he didn't look familiar. I know the name. The name is familiar. Which leads us right into a match for the International Championship, Austin Idol without Jimmy Hart versus Masahito with a manager who's fully in camouflage with his face covered. Idol's defending the International Championship here. Ito picks up the win when the camouflaged manager hits Austin Idol with nunchucks and he gets counted out. So they didn't explain it on commentary, but obviously this championship was a championship you could win by a countout, which I believe, and I might be wrong on this, if you know, put it down in the comments for sure. I believe one of the Japanese companies, either New Japan or All Japan, did have a clause in their contracts that you could lose their championships by countout or disqualification. So I might be wrong, but I think that's one of the clauses that was in there, and that may be what they were doing here. For the whole overarching thing, the videos, the promos, the match itself, I'm giving this whole segment a 5. I thought it was fantastic. This is what I really love about these old Memphis shows. You get a lot of guys that are, historically relevant. Austin Idol, Jimmy Hart, Tommy Rich, Eddie Gilbert. All these guys are major players. Eddie Gilbert helped create ECW. Tommy Rich is a former NWA champion when NWA was really a big deal. Jimmy Hart, if I have to explain to you Jimmy Hart's importance in wrestling, I don't know why you're watching this video, because it goes without saying. Austin Idol is one of the great characters of the 70s and 80s. This is why I love watching this. You get to see so much historically great talent, and especially on this show, you got to see a lot of really, really great characters in the history of wrestling. That being said, moving on to our next match, we get a highlights of Jerry Lawler versus Rick Rood for the Southern Heavyweight Championship, which Rood picks up the win on this. After the match, we get Jerry Lawler going crazy because Jim Neidhart got involved, which is funny. It's always funny seeing Jim Neidhart without a beard. We got Rich and Gilbert get involved in this again. The PYT Express, which we're going to talk about them here in a minute. At the time, Rick Rude had a valet named Angel. Angel gets attacked. Lawler even hits Angel, which I know wouldn't fly nowadays, but it was part of the thing. The crowd went crazy for it. Afterwards, we get a Rick Rude promo. He's talking about how Lawler injured Angel. It almost came off as Rick Rude was the face in the promo and Lawler was the heel. Even though that wasn't the case. Lawler was definitely the face here and Rick Rude was definitely the heel. Again, I don't know if this was because Lawler switched face and heel several times. And I don't remember Rick Rude ever working as a face other than his very beginning of his career. So I don't know if this led to a change where Lawler became a heel and Rude became a face. I know Rude would leave shortly after this, not maybe a year or so later, to go over to Jim Crockett. But for what it was, everything about this was fantastic. I give it all a 5. I mean, you got Jerry Lawler, Rick Rude. The aftermath has Jimmy Anvil Neidhart. Again, Rich and Gilbert, the PYT Express. Again, I'm going to talk about them later a little bit. So I'm giving this overall a 5. We go to commercial, we come back. We have a prolonged promo. And this, again, another reason why I love Memphis wrestling. All of this is packed into an hour. So far there is a ton of stuff. We get Jerry Lawler and Austin Idol out there talking about their tag team match coming up, that Lawler doesn't trust Jimmy Hart, which brings out Dutch Mantell, who also says to Austin Idol, look, me and you, we were both in the first family together. You know he can't be trusted, which brings out Jimmy Hart. They referenced the match earlier where Jimmy Hart wasn't at ringside for Austin Idol when he fought Masahito. And it's insinuated that Jimmy Hart may have been the guy in the camouflage. Jimmy Hart says he can't tell you why, but then he does eventually say when Austin Idol keeps pressing that he has diarrhea. Austin Idol says, well, I got the thing that'll fix this to prove that you're not against me. Let's go for a rematch. And then Jimmy Hart says, oh, the diarrhea is acting up again. So, again, just great stuff here, classic. I'm almost 100% sure it led to Jimmy Hart turning on Austin Idol at some point in the very close future to that. But it was very, very much intact on what the first family was, what Jerry Lawler was, what Austin Idol was, what Dutch Mantell was. You know, I keep gushing over this stuff, but it's just, when you see greatness, it's hard not to be excited and not to rank it highly. I mean, you got some of the greatest talkers in the history of wrestling. If you're not familiar with Austin Idol or Dutch Mantell's work, which they're among hardcore wrestling fans, they're people that are known. Among casual fans, not so much. And Jerry Lawler, a lot more people know him as the puppy-loving commentator, not the penultimate babyface or penultimate heel in Memphis. So it's really great seeing these and seeing just how good all of those people are. This was just fantastic in my opinion. It leads us right into a match where Dutch Mantell is tagging with Pat Hutchinson versus the PYT Express, which is Norvell Austin and Coco Beware, if you're not familiar with them, or Coco Ware at the time. And I wanted to mention this. This is Coco Ware, Coco Beware is one of the people that a lot of people point to and say that's a guy that shouldn't be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I think you're wrong. If you watch the stuff that he did here in Memphis, especially the PYT Express, which I love as a tag team, Coco Beware was more than the Birdman. Coco Ware, as the Birdman, even if he was just that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, because that was a character that was majorly over. And a lot of people derive on him. And, you know, again, you see it over and over again. When people talk about who shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, he's one of the first names that always comes up. And I think that's a real shame that people don't really give him the credit for how great he actually is. I mean, to me, I think Coco deserves it. I think the hate on Coco isn't deserved. PYT Express picks up the win here. Also, during the match, we'll get to this in a second, how the win happened. The Spoiler and Phil Hickerson are on commentary, so they're talking about Dutch the whole time. And it's funny because Hickerson keeps saying, "Get him, dog," talking to on commentary, talking about Norvell Austin. Funny thing is, Norvell Austin, back in the 70s, went by the Junkyard Dog. Cool piece of history there, if you didn't know that. Anyway, at the end of the match, Pat Hutchinson got taken out. The PYT Express are having their way with Dutch Mantell, which brings out Porkchop Cash, which is where the DQ happens, and that's how the PYT Express wins. I'm giving the match a 3. I think it was a little bit overbooked, but it was still good. I didn't think it was terrible. I wouldn't have taken it off the show. I may have, and I know why they did it for storyline wise, I may have put Idol vs. Ito last. But hey, that's just me. We end the show with a promo for an upcoming event where Jerry Lawler is tagging up with the Fabulous Ones. They do an interview, and it's neat to see the Fabulous Ones back on an interview. They weren't in studio during the week, but they were there to shoot the promo. I'm giving that interview because it separated. It went to commercial and came back to that. I'm giving that a 5. I thought it was really good. Overall, so far, on these shows that I've watched, and this is about the 5th or 6th one that I've reviewed, this has been my favorite one. And it's not saying that the other ones are bad or the other ones aren't as good. A lot of the other ones were good too. This to me had the highest concentration of wrestlers I like, storylines that were good, promos that were good, matches that were good. I'm giving the thing a 5. I thought it was great. The sum of the parts is just fantastic here. I mean, anytime I get to see Porkchop Cash, I'm happy. I'm going to smile. Porkchop Cash is a guy that reminds me of being a kid. And he reminds me of that feeling I got when I first started getting into wrestling. And how excited I would be to see guys like Porkchop Cash on my screen. And I love that feeling. And going back and watching these, you get that feeling again. And there's wrestlers today that give me that feeling. Anytime I watch CM Punk, I get that feeling. I get that feeling like I did when I was a kid. Guys like Jon Moxley, Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins even gives me that feeling. I love seeing what these guys are going to do. And it just reminds me of why I love pro wrestling. Even if, the major company calls it sports entertainment, it's still pro wrestling, and it's what I love. And seeing guys like him, Eddie Gilbert's one of my all-time favorites. Seeing Eddie Gilbert in any iteration is awesome. Seeing guys really young here. I know Dutch is very young. Rick Rood's young here. I mean, it gives me a warm feeling in my heart. Like I said, giving the show a 5 overall. Again, check in the description. You could go watch this if you didn't watch it before. If you want to watch it after that, if you don't care about spoilers about who's winning, I highly recommend checking it out. Also highly recommend checking out Bucky749's channel. Really good stuff on there. Awesome guy, awesome stuff. And if you made it all the way to the end, please hit that like button, comment, share. As I do in all my videos, let's gauge and see who made it all the way to the end. Give me a pork chop down in the comments for Porkchop Cash. With all that being said, my name is George Coles. and we've been walking in Memphis.